been a lot of talk about the Republican primary and so forth. Not a lot of talk about Democrats.
It's nice not to have one. Just watch them for a while.
Yeah, I can see that viewpoint. But can President Obama take Florida like he did 3 years ago?
Yes. The answer to that question, and you expected me to say yes, but I mean, the answer is yes. I mean, we're seeing him neck and neck in the polls right now. And that's with them getting all the attention through this process that we've been talking about the last few minutes. The economy is getting better. The jobless rate in Florida has picked up. Unemployment's down. People are now looking at this health care plan. There's been stories all over the news on Justin's site and others are people saying, hey, this thing may be okay. And I think people now want to make him toxic on the Republican side. But I think when we get into 12 and people start listening to the other side, whether it's Newt or Mitt, and they see what the president has done nationally, internationally, I think they're going to say things aren't so bad. And I think Florida, as Sally was talking about, we have so diverse of a state, a lot of base Democrats, but there are a lot of independents that I think are going to do what they did 4 years ago and say, we're okay with him. So the answer is yes, he can win.
In Florida?
In Florida.
Okay. I'm sure that you two totally agree with that analysis.
Well, it's interesting. I actually think, I think Obama's going to be tough to beat. He's an incumbent president, so I won't come right out and tell you what I would typically say, which is that my friend Screven is living in a fantasy world. I mean, the fact is, it's going to be a difficult race. Obama will have all the resources he needs to be competitive. What I think we have to think about, though, is voter intensity, and you have an extremely angry Republican electorate, and you have an angry independent electorate, many of whom supported Obama but feel he has not delivered on his promises. You cannot discount voter intensity in an election, and perhaps we will see that intensity on the Democrat side. But right now what we're seeing is Republicans who say there is no way we are going to let this man get reelected, and they are willing to walk on doors and make phone calls and make contributions and do whatever it takes. I just think that's a piece of the puzzle we don't talk about often, but it's a factor that's important.
And a poll just came out, a Quinnipiac poll, that said that 51% of Floridians don't believe President Obama deserves to be reelected. So he's got a big problem in Florida. He has a problem with independent voters. Independent voters have turned against him almost 2-to-1 across the country and here in Florida. And we know that in Central Florida and other parts of the state, independent voters are a key voting bloc. My concern as a Republican is that President Obama is not going to be able to do anything positively, proactively to get back those independent voters. And what that means is he's going to try to drive up and wage a very nasty, brutal campaign against whoever the Republican nominee is to drive up the Republican nominee's negatives to try to make that nominee an unpleasant alternative to him. With independent voters.
Yet that same poll did say that independents, again, it'll depend, I agree with Sally, it's going to be close either way. There'll be resources on both sides. Florida will be very important to the national scene. But those same independents, if it was Speaker Gingrich, then came back to Obama, the independents were not comfortable with him at all. So again, it's going to matter who it is, right. And again, where the economy is. But I agree with Sally on this point, it'll be very close.
Can I say one quick thing, Steve? It's interesting to me, too, and one thing I think the Democrats have done very effectively is they've already begun to take on the Republicans. Mm-hmm. We don't have a nominee yet. As this crazy contest continues, it may be a while before we have a nominee, and yet you see them already coming after Governor Romney on his positions on issues with some very effective advertising. That's smart on their part. I think they clearly see a problem, and that's why you see them taking these actions. So.
Well, speaking of brutality in a campaign, I've got some issues here. We're going to kind of have a lightning round. I see some issues coming before us where there will be a lot of engagement, let's say, and probably some negative engagement. And I'm just going to raise some of them with you to get your reactions. Justin, the 1% versus the 99%.
That's divisive rhetoric. It's beneath the President of the United States. We need a president, we need a presidential candidate that's going to unite America. It's not going to look for ways to divide. Will it be an issue? I think we saw President Obama use that language in his speech that he gave in Kansas this week. I find it very unfortunate, but I think that that's what the Democrats are going to have to try to do. They're casting as a villain the banks, the corporate jet owners, the wealthy, and they're going to try to rile up some class warfare, and that's unfortunate.
Screven, will it work?
The banks aren't the villains. I mean, I think part of this is, I mean, that It is what people feel, that you see what's going on Wall Street with the Occupy that's spread all across the country. People are mad at the banks. They're mad at some of these tax cuts. They do not feel like they're getting their share, and they want somebody to stand up for them. So I think I think it will work.
Sally, Obama versus the Republicans on the economy.
Well, that's a no-brainer. I mean, if there is one issue that Republicans can deliver on, it's the economy. Obama's had 3 years to do something about this. And the fact of the matter is, not only are people not better off, they are worse off. And I think if Republicans are able to unite behind a candidate, which I'm confident will do regardless of who our nominee is, this is the winning issue for this campaign. It's jobs and the economy. And to this 1 versus 99% issue, it's the middle class. We're the middle class. You know, there are plenty of people in the 99% who pay no taxes at all. It's shocking to me that the Democrats are attempting to use this rhetoric because it is so easy to turn around. I mean, we are in a strong position on the economy. The president has shown no ability to understand the real economy, where the private sector creates jobs, not government. Government jobs don't last. He is completely off key on this. He does not understand it. We're looking forward to that type of battle and that discussion.
Well, they're going to throw tomatoes at me now, but we inherited a mess. And I mean, they say we've had 3 years, but sometimes these economic mess can be decades in the making. And we inherited this. He has saved the auto industry. He has done, we don't know, but for some of those stimulus packages that Republican legislatures took and used, how bad it could have been. So, I mean, she's right, Sally's right, it's going to be on the economy, but I think we're in a position to explain what we've done and say we need 4 more years to right the ship, which you see the market, there are indicators that things are getting better.
Who would give him 4 more years to right the ship? I mean, I just don't see any way we can get
Many
there.
people.
I'm going to get the box of tomatoes and distribute them equally. Screven, illegal immigration.
We're not Arizona. And what they've tried to do, to make a wedge issue that we've talked about, is to take immigration and try to inflame the rhetoric to get, usually again, the right side of the Republican Party fired up. Florida, and this is interesting, Stephen, that you have traditional Republican donors and organizations like the Restaurant Association, like agriculture, like Disney and the entertainment industry against these immigration issues that some people have proposed. So we don't have immigrants in Florida taking jobs. We do not have the same issues. The immigrants in Florida are a vital part of our economic engine here. So I think it's a knee-jerk reaction to Arizona and other things trying to find a wedge issue politically that we don't need in Florida.
Sally, is it a tricky issue for Republicans in Florida?
I have to say, I'm right where Screven is on this. I mean, and perhaps that is my bias as a Floridian or someone who understands the value that immigrants bring to the country. I think it is unfortunate, just as I think it's unfortunate that Obama has used the 99 versus 1% issue, that Republicans have focused on immigration in the way that they have. I mean, there is no question that we have to secure our borders. There is no question that we need to up our efforts in that regard, but I think we also have to be mindful of the contributions that immigrants are making. And you won't find many leaders in Florida, Republicans in Florida, who don't agree with Screven on this issue. It'll be interesting to see at the end of the day if it's actually used. I don't think it will drive voters.
Let's go on to another race, the race for the United States Senate, where we have Democrat incumbent Bill Nelson and a yet to be determined Republican. But Screven, we have to talk about the Republican side because there was a big development, and that is that United States Congressman Connie Mack III jumped into the Republican primary and almost immediately zoomed to the top. Justin, your analysis of where that Republican race is going, how strong a candidate will Congressman Mack be, and will it still be a race?
He will be strong because his name is so well known, and his father was very well liked by Republican primary voters and did a very good job. I think that's very important in a state with 18 million voters, 4 million registered Republican voters, 8 media markets, as Sally mentioned earlier in the show. It's an expensive state to campaign in. The value of having that name ID is worth millions of dollars. and he's running against 2 other candidates whose names have never appeared on a statewide ballot. So that's the upside. The downside for Connie Mack is that he's getting into the race late. A lot of Republican activists, a lot of Republican donors have already picked sides. They're already supporting former State Representative Hasner, or already supporting former Senator George Lemieux. So Connie Mack's going to have some catching up to do, but boy, that name really does help him in a state as large as Florida.
The other down, I mean, it's funny when people talk about him since he got in, they immediately talk about the dad and the grandfather. They never talk about this Connie Mack. And I think we used the whack-a-mole analogy earlier. I think you're going to see the rest of the group, you know, when he gets under that spotlight, attack him. And he's got some negatives. I mean, where there's barroom fights, that his first and only substantive job other than getting elected was working for Hooters. He didn't vote for his dad. He never turned out and actually voted. He's got issues about where he lives. Does he spend more time with his wife in California than he does here? He really hasn't done much since he's been at Congress, and he's running as an outsider from a toxic Congress, but he's been there, what, 8 to 10 years. So the rest of them are gonna turn on him, and he's got a lot of things to explain. And so I don't think it's a runaway to answer your question. I think
Sounds like you've been doing some opposition
I think
research.
I think this race will tighten up. But the name ID is very important, Justin.
All right. Who would like to say what are the 2 or 3 most the hottest issues that the legislature will face in redistricting? Raise your hand. Who would like to do it? All right, Justin.
I'll take a stab at it. Well, I think one issue is Amendments 5 and 6 that the voters of Florida approved last year, which prohibits the legislature from taking into account to help incumbents or to take into account political party in terms of how they redistrict. So that's the legislature is drawing the lines under brand new rules that have never been tested in court. There's a lot of legal uncertainty. Everyone's getting all lawyered up because they know that ultimately this is going to end up in court. I think one thing that is interesting when you look at the very first maps that were put out this week is how many incumbents don't actually live in their districts. I mean, I think that's very unusual. I haven't seen any historic comparisons, but I think there's a higher number of incumbents who don't live in their newly drawn districts. And again, they still have to be approved by the legislature. But at least these first drafts, I think, show that the legislature is trying to comply as best it can with Amendments 5 and 6, even given the legal uncertainty of what those amendments actually mean.
We have to stop there. We're out of time. But we will come back and we will talk about redistricting because this issue will be with us for months. But thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.